This is the Living in Mid-Bloom podcast, lighthearted and heartfelt conversations about what it looks like to live, heal, and blossom in middle age. I'm your host, April Pruitt. Let's get our bloom on. This is my 50th episode. Yay. Hey, mid-bloomers. I am just celebrating my 50th episode of my podcast. I'm so grateful for you folks that have been listening this whole time or have subscribed to my podcast. I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful for the great guests that I've had, people sharing their personal stories and allowing you as listeners and me to get a glimpse of their lives. Every conversation has just been a window into different lives, different challenges, people embracing change and being resilient. I'm so blessed that this has come together, and I know it's not me. There's God working in the background for this all to come together. So I'm just grateful, and I'm grateful for you listening to my personal journey, in addition to the other lovely people that have shared their lives. So I just thank you. Share this with people you know, share this podcast, and I hope it does bring you something special into your life. Thank you. So let's start the show. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining me today. Thank you for coming back and listening to the show. I have got a great guest today. She was with us last fall, and we talked about narcissistic tendencies. This is Petra van Deijl. Petra's an international certified life coach and breathwork practitioner. Hi, Petra.
Hello, April. Thank you so much for having me back on your podcast.
Oh, thank
This is
you
just
for
wonderful.
coming. You have a special place in my heart. You really
Oh.
do. And I thank Justin for having you on his show so I could say, hey, can I steal her for mine? I'd like her as a permanent guest. So.
Oh, that'll be awesome.
Oh, yeah, wouldn't it be cool?
Oh,
Not that we would
yeah.
run out of subject matter, that's for sure.
I don't think we could ever run out
Yes,
on this topic.
unfortunately. So today we're going to talk about people pleasing. And
Yeah.
it almost, when I think about it, it's almost like the opposite of narcissism.
Mm-hmm.
Because with the narcissist, it's about them. And the people pleaser, it's also about somebody else other than themselves. And,
Exactly.
I've heard it be attached to childhood trauma, whatever. But I mean, it doesn't even have to be that deep. I think there's so many different levels of people pleasing that's out there. Is there any kind of medical term for it? Or is it just we kind of came out with something that kind of fit the mark?
I would say people pleasing ties into the term that is, that you hear very often nowadays, which is codependency. Yeah.
Yeah.
But as you just stated, April, is that it doesn't necessarily have to come from childhood trauma. It could simply be the way we're raised. Certain generations, if I look at my generation, I was raised to always be a good girl, to not speak up, to not speak back, and to do everything to please the other person.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I wonder why, well, what am I saying? Women always have to be quiet, pay attention, listen, don't say anything. And I think part of that also has to do with being able to have your own feelings about things. I know with my family, they did not want me to ever be angry if I ever complained about anything. And there was just, this be quiet. You don't have anything to complain about, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
And so they'd be upset. And then I think, okay, how do I make sure we're okay? So oh, you guys, well, I'll fix dinner tonight. Or, yeah, you can borrow that money. That's no problem. You do these things and you're hoping to put you, it's kind of like, I don't want to say like, now you're safe.
Yes,
You've given them what they needed and you don't have to worry about them coming at you or doing anything that would be negative uh,
right.
towards you. Talk about love relationships and how I know that, my goal was to make sure, and I never really thought too much about it, but I was very codependent in this relationship. I struggled continuing parts of my life that I kind of put aside.
Mm,
So I'm in this relationship and I just started doing everything with him and not with anybody else. I actually had a friend come to my house. She's like, "April, where are you? We
yes.
haven't seen you. You were in choir and you disappeared. What's?" And I was like, "Oh, everything's fine. Everything's fine." But I look back and I think it was almost like I was on this weird drug. You know,
Mm.
how do you run across it in the work that you do?
Well, really, on a daily basis, with speaking with so many different people across the globe, and this is a very huge challenge for people, especially who have suffered trauma, where they feel the need, it's the urge, the absolute need to prioritize other people's needs above their own. So I hear it daily. Yeah.
And then I think, okay, so why is that? I was a situation where a couple of people that I hadn't talked to in years called
Hmm.
me, reached out to me out of the blue. And those relationships didn't really end on a great note, but I still cared about these people. But the one person, he has literally called me 3 times weekly. Hey, April, just reaching out. I wish we can get in touch. And part of me is like, they sound desperate. I'm feeling sad for that person. Should I just call just to, then I thought, no, April, let's be honest. You don't want this person in your life anymore. It's not
Exactly.
my fault if they're not happy. And I can't make that difference. I'm curious about what you think about that. What could be going on in their mind when they're doing that, calling me
Hmm.
weekly. April, it's me. Remember me? Like, call me. Then I thought, oh, is this person sick? Is something?
Right.
But he was also saying, oh, I'm fine. Just getting older. Normal health stuff. So I thought, okay, he's not
Mm.
sick. I'm not going to call him back. I cried a little bit, honestly, because it felt sad. I thought, if I ever in a position where I don't have anybody or that I'm reaching out to somebody that I hadn't talked to in years and desperately want to talk to them,
Yes.
I'm just trying to understand that.
And if ever, April, you needed someone to assist you, to help you, you just needed to reach out to someone, these very people that call you, would they be there for you?
It's funny you say that. Probably not.
Right.
Probably not.
So this is it. This is where when people love coming to you because you listen to their challenges, their problems, whatever's going on in their life, whenever they need something, April's there to help. But when it's non reciprocal, that's when it becomes toxic. When you cannot phone someone and say, 3 o'clock in the morning, I need you because of whatever is going on, and they do not answer their phone, or they say, how dare you call me at 3 in the morning, that is a toxic relationship. It needs to be reciprocal. Yeah.
Well,
And in this case, this is how people take advantage of your goodwill, your good heart, your dis-ease to please.
hmm,
They take advantage of that.
that is so true. I feel that is so true. One of the last times I saw him, he was my hairdresser. So I had left my appointment. It was only a couple of minutes later, and I was stopped at a red light, and a car came off of the highway ramp And I thought, oh my God, this guy's going to hit me. I'm going to be dead. And I'm just sitting there, smacks my car. It spins around. I'm okay, except for, some bruises. And I will tell anyone if they ask you, do you want to go to the doctor? And I'd say, no, no, I'm fine. Go.
Mm,
Because
exactly.
you're still in shock and you think you're okay and you're really not.
That's right.
The other person in the car, I thought he was dead. He was passed out, but obviously it was that person's fault. So I call him because he's just a couple of minutes away. I tell him what happened and he gives me a ride home. And I said, can you come in for just a couple of minutes? I gotta go home.
Wow.
Okay.
Wow. Yeah.
But I was grateful that he gave me a ride home. But I look back at
Yes.
that and I think, he didn't even really like follow up with me or
Mm,
check on me. But again,
no.
I kind of like, oh, well,
Yes. Making excuses for other people's bad behavior.
right.
Oh, well, you know, there's a term that my mother always uses, and she uses it in jest. She'll say, well, I'll just suffer. And I say, well, why would you settle to just suffer? Set your boundaries. Say, no, that's not okay with me.
Because sometimes it's
Yeah.
easier than you're not ready
Yes.
to fight. That's what
Exactly. Exactly.
ensue. So this other person I had that had reached out to me, she was an entrepreneur. She's got her own hair creams and stuff like that. And we just bonded over doing our own thing. At the time that I was in touch with her, I had my greeting card business. And we would stay in touch periodically just to kind of urge each other on. As we're getting to know each other, I was willing to share more about myself, and I would talk to her about struggling with weight loss. The second time she and I talked about that, she said, you're going to have to get that under control. She said, because we can't have that. Okay. Now, that was the last time I talked to her. Okay. So here she is years later calling me out of the blue. Hey, April, it's me. Hope all's well with you. Give me a call. And that one was easier. I was like, well, what am I calling you for? The last thing you said to me was you were judging me.
Exactly.
She called again and I didn't respond. So now I'm like, Petra, what these people reaching out to me, I'm like, is this like a lesson from God? Like, let's see if you'll pass this test, April. We're going to have two people that weren't really there for you reach out.
Right. Right.
It just seemed so, I don't know. It just not odd, but the fact that it happened around the same time and these two people that want me back in their lives for whatever reason. And I knew that it was about them and had nothing to do with me, you know.
Right. Right. People sense this. There's the energy that one puts out that people who want to take advantage will sense that. They know exactly who they can call and who will usually not turn them down, not reject them.
Oh, wow.
But again, it's all got to do, because a toxic person or a narcissistic person exploits a people pleaser's desire to please. And they do this through very subtle and sometimes not so subtle manipulation to control them.
Yeah.
So what is usually missing in these cases, in these situations, is that there are no clear boundaries
Yes. Yes.
on your part, used to be on my part, and sometimes I still have that urge to please, the dis-ease to please.
Right.
But then I remember boundaries. Set your boundaries and maintain your boundaries. It's not to keep other people out, it's to keep yourself safe. And by doing that, again, the energy will attract those who are also respectful of their own boundaries and therefore your boundaries.
That's so true because the relationships I have now, like the next show that's going to be airing probably tomorrow is about friendship and how friendships that have ended and me seeing how the part I played in
the decline of those relationships by not being authentic. Because if they don't know who I am, if I'm hiding things from them or I'm not honest, how are they supposed to know?
Exactly. Yeah.
So it just, I don't know. It's just come up so much in so many different things that I do, and with different people that I talk to. There is a lovely woman that had issues with fraud. A guy that she had gone out with, he basically lied about so many things, and there's certain things that she didn't question that probably were red flags. But you're like, oh, I don't want to be a troublemaker, and well,
Mm.
I'm sure they didn't really mean to hurt me.
Ah, right. There's the excuses again, making excuses for people. Yeah.
Right. And
Yeah.
I think you forget that other people look at the world differently. There are people out there that
Absolutely.
are takers because, for whatever their reasons are, we've all gone through trauma. That was the other thing I would use an excuse. Oh, they've gone through so much.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm like, well, like, wait a minute. So
Yeah.
have I.
Yeah.
What trumps their stuff versus, mine?
Exactly. And it is true. It is true that I don't think there's a single individual on earth who has not gone through some form of trauma. Absolutely. But that does not give you the right to hurt someone else or take advantage of someone else. It's not right. So, again, and I hear you there, April, where I used to make the same excuses. Oh, the people who abuse me, they've been through trauma and they didn't mean to hurt me and da, 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 da. And there's a whole story we attach to that, which is simply not true.
Right.
There's
What do
no
they say?
excuse for abuse.
Hurt people. It's like, okay, enough.
Yeah.
Enough of that.
Which is true.
Yeah.
That's why I say get a grip. Get a grip on yourself and heal your own stuff.
Yeah.
In this instance, I'm directing it to toxic people who just step over, violate every single boundary, take advantage of you. And also to look at what you just said, April, where you said I was enabling certain things in the friendships. And this is also true for a people pleaser, is that the whole toxic dynamic is enabled by us, myself included. I played into it for years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's ongoing. Like you said, sometimes you feel like you maybe kind of fall into that pattern in a certain situation. And I almost did with these folks kind of popping up. And hearing you talk about this is really puts me more at ease in really understanding that this has nothing to do with me and
Oh, no.
all to do with them.
Yeah.
That just honestly, that just makes me feel so much better. It's like,
Right.
you're constantly having to evaluate relationships and different people that happen to fall into your life. Right now, I have the best relationships of my life, and it has to do with the internal work that I've been doing.
Yes.
And I think also with different guests like you, how I learned so much, or it's just right on the tip of, I think I'm going to figure it out. And it takes work, and it takes being vulnerable and being open. And
Absolutely.
yeah, and there are a lot of us, mostly women, that are out there people pleasing their butts off.
Ain't that the truth? Yes. Yeah.
So, with your clients, how do you help them in those situations, especially if it's somebody they really love, whether it's a parent, a friend, a lover? I don't know any technical terms, but basically you're standing up for yourself that you have a right to be first. What has caused you not to value that? I'm just curious how you help them kind of find their way, because there's really nothing else you can do except help them see things for what they are instead of what they think they are.
You hit the nail on the head right there. Is to see people, see situations as they are. Don't make it any worse, don't make it any better, but see it for what it is. Because when you are willing to confront that truth, that level of truth, that is going to pull you forward on your journey, on your healing journey. Face the truth because it will pull you forward. And I know that's a very difficult thing to do when healing the dis-ease to please, is that we don't want to face the truth. We rather blow it up or we rather minimalize it. But it's facing the truth and then understanding that there are three aspects that play into the maintenance of people pleasing. And that is that there is a lot of guilt, shame, and a conflict of loyalty involved. So feeling guilty, feeling shameful that you want to set a boundary, feeling that you are not worthy of standing and speaking up for yourself, and therefore being able to establish healthy relationships in whatever sense, whether it's family, whether it's friendships. But that's where to start is, why do you feel the shame? Why do you feel the guilt? Why do you still feel loyal to this person? And the bottom line there, of course, we go very deep when I'm working with clients. But just to touch the surface here, it's about understanding that the shame, the guilt, and that sense of loyalty is all caused by the toxic person, all caused by the narcissist, by their manipulation tactics, how they can manipulate you into believing that if you don't play into their needs, if you don't fulfill them, then there is something wrong with you. There's something wrong with what you're saying. There's something wrong with your essence. And so what they do is, that's where the codependency comes in. They make you very dependent on them.
Okay.
Because people need, and especially the people pleasers, they need the approval. They need to know, if you're okay, then I'm okay.
Okay.
There are so many things that play into that. There's a fear of conflict, because they don't want to get up in your face. They want to avoid any kind of conflict. So all this fear plays in, because it's all fear-based.
Yeah.
Shame, guilt, and loyalty, it's all fear-based with regards to narcissistic relationships. So the first thing is to say, establish a relationship with yourself, a healthy friendship with yourself.
How do you do that? Because I
Well,
tell you, tell
that
me,
is a whole
please.
process. Well, the example I always use is, how would you treat someone you really cared for? A best friend or your partner or your child. How would you treat them?
Of course, of course.
9 times out of 10, it would be with love, with respect, with honesty. And those are the very same ingredients that you use to create a relationship with yourself.
Hmm.
And yes, it's a process. I mean, if you've been people pleasing most of your life, you cannot change it overnight. It is a process. But if you're willing to go on that journey, because it's a very special journey,
Mm-hmm.
then anything is possible. And you can kick the habit. It's learned, it's taught behavior.
That's
It's not
interesting.
part of who we are. No,
The way you word that, because it's so true. When you said those words, and and I sit here and I think it's like falling in love with yourself. A friend of mine had posted something on Facebook, and it was a question. It was, I can't remember exactly, but it had something to do with loving yourself, falling in love with yourself. Do you see that person in front of you? And
yes,
her response was, she's at a distance. I know I love her, and I want to understand her more. So it's like, okay, you're talking to yourself.
right,
You're trying to be honest with yourself about how you feel about yourself. And so, is there any issue of like control as a people pleaser? I'm just thinking out loud, because it's like, okay, I know if I do this, this, and this, they'll leave me alone about something else, or I don't know. I'm just,
absolutely. There is an element of control, yes. Because especially when you have been raised, or if anyone has been raised, to prioritize other people's needs, then you're going to feel like you don't matter and you lose control of that situation. because you have been taught, if I do such and such and such, then I will gain approval to some degree. Then I will be seen to some degree. So when you've been raised in that dynamic, of course it's going to feel like you've lost control of yourself.
Yeah.
So in effect, you will go through life trying to control other people and other situations. And this is what happens when you are connected in whatever relationship form with a narcissist or toxic person, is that you feel that you can control their behavior by saying, well, if I offer them more love, more understanding, more loyalty, more of everything, then I get to control the way they treat me.
And
So
this
because there's control. Yes.
talk about screwed up relationships. I mean,
Yeah.
sit here thinking of that, and it's like you're in this position, however you got there, and you try to work within that dynamic instead of even conceiving that the best thing to do is to get out of it. But
Exactly.
okay, how can I use this to my best advantage? Can I tell you how grateful I am for not being in those relationships because I have
Oh,
been
yes.
there. Oh my gosh. Just the
Yeah.
thought of it, it was exhausting.
Yes, you and me both. Absolutely. It
Ju-
is so exhausting. People don't realize that when they leave a relationship, a toxic one, they have just regained control. That is true control.
Yeah.
When you can decide for yourself, I'm not tolerating this, I deserve so much more, I'm taking control of my life, because it is an illusion to try and control anyone else. It's a huge illusion. So you can control your own life.
You're right, because I think when you first get out, you're feeling wounded and maybe a little insecure, especially if you've always been in a relationship like that. So
Yes.
you feel a little uncomfortable. But
Yes.
then, like you said, you get to the point where it's like, oh, wait a minute. Oh, I'm free. I freed myself. I didn't
Yes.
really like that. Yeah, it's a new way of thinking.
Yes.
And again, a way to bring joy back in your life, because when you're in something like that, you're not. It's just impossible to be when you're not being yourself. You know, these friends that I had in my life, they didn't see me for who I was because I didn't show them. And that
There
was
you
my
go.
fault. And I make the point of it takes two. It takes two. And you can't sit back and just point. You have a part to play in all of those things.
Yes.
Though it's not saying that whether you were in a position where you needed them and didn't really recognize what was happening. Because being a victim in some of these situations, I get it, but it's being conscious. And a lot of times people don't want to be conscious. I know I didn't for a long time. And every now and then, where's
Yes.
my tub of ice cream? It's like,
Yes. Absolutely.
oh
Yeah.
gosh.
Or over shopping or overeating or just, misusing substances. Yes, it's all a flight mechanism. You
Yes.
don't want to deal with the truth of the situation, so you just flee. Yeah.
Yes.
Been there, done that. You and me both, April.
I love that.
Yes.
Flee,
Yes.
run off.
Yeah.
So, what are you up to these days? I know, are you still doing your breath work, and are you still working with different clients, and what's going on?
Absolutely. I'm still doing breathwork sessions. I did one yesterday,
Oh,
and just amazing to be able to practice the powerful healing tool in breathwork. It's so beautiful.
oh,
So
that's
yes, still doing that, and with my Dutch audience right now, I've launched a whole new coaching program, groups coaching. So that
oh,
starts in June, and then I'm going to move it to the international side. So I would love to do the same coaching program with all of my dear friends and clients outside of the Netherlands.
Oh, that's
So
wonderful.
been busy, busy, busy. Yes.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, it
Well,
is wonderful.
I thank you so much for allowing me to pick your brain and to be on the show today.
You're so welcome, April. So welcome. Thank you so much for having me.
I appreciate everything that you do and everything that you're doing for so many people out there that need someone like you, because you're clearly empathetic. And that, to me, that's so important, because you've been in those situations, you understand them, and you're
Yes.
not beating people up for making mistakes, depending on who they're going to, whether it's a coach or a therapist, get shamed over again. And that's a big issue, is finding the right people that can
Yes.
truly help. Otherwise, you get kind of stuck in the situation again and again. So,
In the cycle, that's true.
yeah.
And no,
So,
I would never beat people up, because people do that enough to themselves. We've all done it. When we get out of trauma, we just beat ourselves up about, why didn't I see it sooner? Why didn't I do this? Why didn't I do that?
yeah.
Just no, 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 no. There is no room for that when you're healing.
Yeah.
If anything, there should be so much compassion for yourself,
Yeah.
so much self-forgiveness,
Yes.
so much gentleness
Oh, yes.
towards yourself.
Kindness. We need more
Kindness.
kindness in this
Yes. Yes.
world.
And
Well,
also, to just add there, April,
yeah.
it's really acknowledging when you're healing from any form of abuse. I know in this podcast, we speak mostly on narcissistic abuse when it's the two of us. And it's, the recovery. I think the most important thing is simply to acknowledge to yourself, this is the way I feel. These are my emotions. Whether it's anger, you mentioned anger at the beginning of our conversation. Don't be angry, especially girls. You are not allowed to be angry. Don't show emotions is what is usually said to the boys.
Right.
And these boys become men who don't show emotions. The women become people pleasers. But acknowledging your feelings and emotions without fixing them in the moment,
Mm.
that's all you need to do. No judgment.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And that feels like that's hard to come by sometimes. Everybody's too busy.
it is. It is. However, to just start off on the journey, I would say when you feel all these emotions coming up, instead of suppressing them, take 10 minutes out of your day just for yourself to sit and just be with the feelings,
Mm.
not asking yourself to fix them, but simply just to feel them. It's so important, because the same would go in a friendship where you can acknowledge your friend's anguish or anger or pain. Why not with yourself too?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. That is so true. And it's so important. I appreciate you sharing all of that. It really is so helpful to people. So thank you, my dear. I'm sending you blessings, and I hope to talk to you soon.
Oh, I'd love to be back soon.
All right,
Thank
my
you so
dear.
much, April, for this platform.
Thank you, my
And
dear.
thank you for all that you do.
Oh, thank you, sweetheart. Bye. Thank you for joining me today on Living in Midland. I hope you found this episode insightful, meaningful, and maybe it's given you something to think about. I invite you to share your positive reviews or ideas on topics you would like me to touch on by leaving your comments on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Castbox, Podchaser, or Podcast Addict. We are all divine beings who just want to be seen, heard, and loved. Have a beautiful day.